Hey neighbor, welcome back to Beyond ARTV. My name is John, and today we're going to be discussing 12 of the most iconic album covers of all time. I think we all can understand and appreciate the eye-catching cover that maybe makes you want to check out a record or something that cemented its place in not only your heart, but in the hearts of millions of other people as they correlate that with the meaning behind not only the music, but just that artist. It can be a statement, it can evoke a feeling or an emotion that lingers, and that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. For this glimpse into artistic and musical history, I've partnered with Fiverr to talk about not only the 12 original album covers and maybe the meaning behind them, and some of the stuff surrounding how they were shot, but also we're going to be looking at 12 of the reimagined states that were created by Fiverr artists. Now, I'm sure a lot of you actually do know what Fiverr is. It's a marketplace that connects you to a wide range of talent worldwide when you need to get something done. They're affordable. There's a range of talents on the site for a variety of different topics. But they had 12 artists reimagine some of the most iconic covers, ranging from Elvis Presley to David Bowie and many, many more. Up first is one that I'm sure that we can all appreciate on some level and probably recognize instantly. It's the Beatles with Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. This was designed by pop artists Peter Blake and Jan Hayworth, and it was based upon the idea that the Beatles were performing a concert, and in the background they could have anybody they wanted, not just regular concert attendees. So in place of just putting a stadium of people, they had the artist insert wax figurines and also actual photographs of people, more than 50 of those, and 9 wax figures. Altogether, it ranged from author H.G. Wells to popular musicians of the decade like Bob Dylan, and it ended up being a really huge representation of the 1960s and art culture of that time. When we navigate over to the recreation done by Fiverr artist @TrippySteph, we see their idea behind this. Like the original blended high and low culture and expressing a zeitgeist of the late 60s by depicting the iconic figures that made that state of mind, I tried to express the late 2010s. The figures are following the path of pop culture. And obviously, if you look at the detailed HD image here, you can see everybody and everything. In the background, I believe we see BoJack Horseman, and obviously a lot of other prominent figures in place of the Beatles. It's a nice updating here, and obviously the idea behind a lot of this project was to look at it from the lens of what if this were made today? And I think that they really fucking nailed it here. This is an incredible work of art. There's most likely nobody in the world that hasn't seen the photograph of the naked baby chasing the dollar bill on a fishhook that's on Nirvana's Nevermind. This was their second record, but what a lot of people don't appreciate or even know about probably is the behind the scenes effort that it took to actually get this shot. Nirvana's Kurt Cobain was inspired by watching a program about water births with fellow bandmate Dave Grohl, and he started talking to people at the label, expressing a desire to do that. That's what resulted in some of these early renditions that were pretty graphic showing water births. But from there, he ended up talking to the art director over at Geffen Records, Robert Fisher, and he actually got a photographer on the case. Now, the baby on the album cover obviously didn't happen right away, but finally the concept was nailed down after they hired photographer Kurt Weddle to actually shoot this cover. Fun fact, the baby on the album cover, Spencer Eldon, has recreated this cover 3 different times, for Nevermind's 10th anniversary, for its 17th, and for the 25th. And for that final time, he wanted to appear nude once again, but apparently the photographer wasn't having it and said, "Keep those swim trunks on, buddy." In terms of the reimagined album covers on this list, I think this might be my personal favorite. I love how it was updated to show a baby, yes, chasing the dollar bill, but a mother is right behind it, possessing an iPhone taking a photo of the baby. And underneath this, we can see the artist Gaga Design explain, Nirvana was always a symbol against the mainstream culture, and their original ideas lived up to today's events as well. The new redesigned artwork upgrades the original idea, but now we also have a parent who is not only approving the culture chasing money, but it also proudly films the baby with the intention to share it on social media and gain likes, which are becoming the new supreme goal. It's wild what a shot of a man and his guitar performing in Tampa, Florida has gone on to inspire, but the self-titled album by Elvis Presley has gone down in history due to its memorable face captured by photographer William V. Robertson, and also that bold green and pink text that's been replicated many times over the year by artists paying homage to it. I grew up with this album in pretty steady rotation in my house. The king himself was always present, and my dad, believe it or not, was somewhat of an Elvis impersonator. I mean, a man in his karaoke machine singing all the hits like Tutti Frutti, yes sir. The artist known as @LizardSalt on Fiverr came up with the redesign for the Elvis self-titled album, and here we can see that the original text colors remains intact. We see green and pink, but also there's something that kind of reminds me of the Somebody That I Used to Know music video, Gautier and Kimbra, and the way that it uses kind of this blocky design that almost looks like you could see it in motion, maybe even stop motion and moving, and we see the blocks come together to make Elvis colorful, his guitar, and the artist says the inspiration for this design was for it to kind of be like a Pablo Picasso meets a colorful psychedelic vintage comic book aesthetic, and I totally think they nailed that. Joy Division's debut album Unknown Pleasures makes the list next for its iconic album art. This was designed by Peter Seville, and it's something that I know a lot of people recognize. It's so simple, but so effective. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people look at it as like a t-shirt design, and I have one in my closet. I'm not trying to hide that fact, but I think a lot of people don't actually know the music, and it's unfortunate that it's been used as more of a statement rather than an actual connection to music. But the radio waves here, they almost look like a little forest. You see them making little mountains. I don't know. There's something kind of primal about it, and I love that. Originally, it was going to be an inverse scheme. We had now white on black, but it was going to be black on white, and the artist said, I didn't want it to look too cheap, so we went with this. He had to convince the band at the time, and obviously only 2 Joy Division albums ever happened. Ian Curtis's passing was tragic, but this is a post-punk masterpiece, and in fact at this point I would say post-punk is one of my favorite, probably top 3 genres. This might sound unholy to say, but I might like the reimagined State even more than that classic album cover, and I do obviously love that, cherish it, and appreciate it. But this updated State, the artist @TonyMitty had to say, I see a beautiful and mysterious thing from their music. So in my head, when I heard their music, I see like heart and I become one. And we can see the eye in there that maybe might remind some of like the Illuminati or something unnerving like that. But also, even better, the way that the heart kind of protrudes here. We see the outline in those radio waves. It's kind of unsettling, but again, it's beautiful and artistic. For the next pick on the list of the most iconic album covers of all time, I'm gonna be totally transparent and let you guys know that I've actually never heard the Breakfast in America album by Supertramp. They're an English band. I know that might get me railed in the comments, but I'd rather tell you the truth than sit here and lie straight to your face. However, I've definitely seen this album before plenty of times at the record store. I never really gave it all that much thought, although I was always like, oh, that's kind of weird. But now looking into it more and seeing the idea behind it, I can really appreciate it. In fact, this is an album cover whose packaging actually beat out the likes of the Talking Heads and Led Zeppelin at the 1980 Grammy Awards. So there's gotta be something to it, right? It's certainly innovative, although I can't say that I personally love the album cover myself. I understand its place in history, but in the reimagined State, we have the artist @Leonardo Arajo, I apologize if I butchered your name there, saying, I took inspiration from the original album cover with The Waitress, and I read that the original album cover was supposed to be Cheerios in the Grand Canyon, so I put that on the cover as well. We can see somebody sitting there, a woman, it looks like applying lipstick, Cheerios are falling from the sky, and I actually like this one a lot more. Purple Rain by Prince and the Revolution is not only a song, but it's also a feature-length film, and also a full-length album that sports a truly unforgettable image of Prince sitting atop a purple motorcycle on the cover. Laura Lipuma Nash is the woman responsible for all of Prince's album and single covers from 1984 to 1988. They developed a close connection and friendship during this time, and Prince grew very trusting of her in her artistic decisions and representation, but also, this was the first time they'd ever worked together with Purple Rain coming out in 1984. Laura was ecstatic to be working with Prince, and in fact, the first time they ever met was on the music video shoot for When Doves Cry. Now, obviously, you can do the math for what they came up with and how she saw Prince's vision through. The album cover is legendary for a reason. The GIF format allowed the artist @DVincentGomes to actually bring Purple Rain to life. We still see the flowers in the background, although they look a bit more vibrant here, and you can see the shadows reflecting off of Prince's motorbike and the way that it cascades onto a shadowy figure in the background. This is really incredible detail. I love everything from the clouds of smoke kind of coming up off of the bike in the background, and the artists themselves said, "I see a lot of the style of Prince's song in my work. An energetic and colorful atmosphere, very bright neon colors. It's really something that inspires me, and I can see why. This artist actually captured something incredible here." Both ironic and iconic, the boss himself scored one of the most highly revered album covers of all time in a very, very simple way. Annie Leibovitz shot a picture of his butt with a hat hanging off of his jean pocket while Bruce Springsteen himself stood there facing an American flag. At Box of Wolves on Fiverr reimagined this record and said, "The first thing I did was figure a way of representing America besides the stereotypical tropes." And we can see an album cover that does say Bruce Springsteen, the name of the album, born in the U.S.A. The clouds in the background with a pink tint to them are a very nice touch, but my favorite thing about it is the fact that this headless figure is donning like an American flag jacket, and we can see a rose growing up where the head should be. Is it commentary on how we're always trying to start over, grow something better? Even though we consistently take steps back, it feels like, especially this decade, it's been all over the place. I think this is kind of a perfect representation for America in its current state. Refined but bold, Pink Floyd's Daring the Dark Side of the Moon is an absolutely magnetic cover that stands out in a world of its own when it comes to legendary status. The band sort of had an idea of what they wanted, but they allowed the artist George Hardy to draw up 7 different concepts, all of which involve light in some way. I was obsessed with this album cover long before I actually heard the contents, the music that was within. It's a record that my parents owned on vinyl. I wasn't allowed to listen to it growing up, but they had this prism in the living room that would reflect light, and I would always try to get it to look like the colors that I could see on that album cover. I didn't even know the band's name, but I just knew what it looked like, and I wanted to make the rainbow point out on the carpet in the living room. This actually might be one of the more controversial redesigns, but I've grown to like it a lot more, even though it kind of has the cutesy thing going on with the prism having eyes. The artist at Melina Robledo said, "I started thinking outside the frame and came up with this idea where the prism itself could be playing around with the lights and hallucinating with the results." That makes a ton of sense if you've ever heard what this album is kind of associated with. The Velvet Underground and Nico is the debut album by the Lou Reed-fronted band The Velvet Underground that released in 1967. It's extremely minimal in its design, featuring only the banana, Andy Warhol's name, and the Peel Slowly in C sticker. And you're wondering, why is that there? It doesn't make sense now. Well, back in the day and on some future reissues of the album, there was actually a sticker that you could peel off and it had a banana underneath. What's really interesting about the redesign from the artist at George Fairbairn on Fiverr is the fact that not only is this done in GIF format so that we can actually see movement here, but also it's not in a traditional, square aspect ratio like we expect most album covers to be. We can see some Lego-styled people actually making this together. They're making the album, we can see the title roll out, and they said, "I wanted to modernize his iconic work whilst keeping it true to its original self. Bringing movement to it and adding complementary colors, something Warhol himself started doing and something I draw inspiration from." Often imitated but never captured as effectively, photographer Edo Bertoglio captured the essence of Blondie in a strikingly poignant image that's gone on to become timeless. This new wavy and power pop release features more gems than you can even count on one hand, or even two depending on who you'd ask. But perhaps even more legendary at this point than the music itself is this image of Debbie Harry and company standing quite literally in front of Parallel Lines, the album's title, and they're all done in black and white, which might not make you think that there's a ton going on, but for some reason it really stands out. The statement from the artist at Vis-a-Vis, with a few more underscores under there obviously, is strikingly straightforward. We can see them saying, "We added the rainbow colors as a statement that the world is more fluid today." And that makes sense. Everything complements each other really well, not only in the color scheme, but also in the flashing GIF format. Brian Duffy shot the cover for Aladdin Sane, which is obviously a play on words there, Aladdin Sane, the 6th studio album by the English music icon himself, David Bowie. On this album cover, we saw a lot of people kind of initially freaking out because they thought after the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust, maybe he was moving on from that character. But as Bowie himself later clarified, this was just Ziggy Stardust on his journey to America and through America, which makes sense given that that album really propelled him to stardom, and this wasn't necessarily entirely a new character, it was just an updated form of Ziggy Stardust. On the album's cover, we can see the David Bowie eyes closed, obviously iconic right there, but the lightning bolt is even more important. Looking at the modernized reimagining in a world post-David Bowie, where he's gone up to be the starman in the sky, perhaps gazing down upon us, this is a haunting image, another one of my top favorites out of the top 12 that were reimagined. The artist at Jetson said, "For me, David Bowie always represents avant-garde and futurism, no matter his music or his style. Even though he left this world, he never left us, and he could still live in a digital world," a statement that I fully can back. The album cover for Straight Outta Compton features the infamous photo of the Miracle Mile shot. And something that I didn't even know about this album cover until I started researching for this video is that this is the only image that we actually have with all 5 of the prominent members of NWA actually looking straight at the camera without sunglasses or anything. It's the only one in existence. How did that happen? 30 years later, in a much bleaker reimagined state, we see the artist at Lanny Hoeing saying, "The inspiration behind this illustration is the unfortunate state of our society, and almost as social progress is going backwards." This is one that closes out our list on kind of a sad note, but also the sad reality is that it is our reality in America. That's going to be a wrap on this video exploring 12 of the most iconic album covers of all time. I think this was really interesting for me because I got to learn more about the process creating some of these images that are so highly praised and revered at this point, but I would love to know what you guys think of the originals, of the reimagined state. Which was your favorite? My vote would probably be for the updated version of Nirvana's Nevermind. It makes a lot of sense, but I love the Prince album cover as well, even NWA, so many of these. I would like to know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Shout out to all of the Fiverr artists that actually did this, all 12 of you. You're extremely talented, and thank you to Fiverr for partnering with me on this video. If you want to see another video where I explored album art and if it's still important or not, then click this card right over here. Tap here for another recent video, or check me out on social media at all of these links that you see here in the description down below. Other than that, I will see you soon for more right here on Beyond ARTV.